You're listening to the Onside Podcast, the podcast for innovation-driven entrepreneurship here in Atlantic Canada. I'm your host, Alex McCann, and this is Season 2, Episode 9, and the theme this month is Women and Innovation in Entrepreneurship, a Balancing Act. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Rafaela Andrade, co-founder and CEO of Myomar Molecular. She moved to Canada from Brazil in 2009 to start her graduate studies in cancer research, where she was awarded prestigious scholarships and prizes for research and innovation. She's been working with molecular biology techniques, managing projects, and developing innovative techniques to improve research outcomes and collaborations for over a decade. Rafaela's vision is to translate scientific discovery into public health. She's looking to bridge the gap between patients and science and to create collaborations between governments, industry, and academia. She's now a mother of 3, passionate about health and fitness, and is dedicated to growing the company and improving people's quality of life. Rafaela, I am so pleased to welcome you to the Onside Podcast.
Hi, thank you very much.
Well, I'm so glad that you're here. And, we like to talk about innovation-driven entrepreneurship, and things that are happening here in Nova Scotia. And you have a really interesting story and journey. And our theme this month is about women and innovation and entrepreneurship and kind of that balancing act of trying to manage it all when you want to do amazing things that hopefully will have an impact in the world. And I don't know if many people know that you're from Brazil, but I thought maybe you could give us a little bit of background about yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up here in Halifax.
So I'm originally from Brazil, and I came to Canada in 2009. I was actually a student, undergrad student, because I have been a student for so many years of my life. But at the time I came, I was an undergrad student, and I want to learn English better because I spoke very poor English.
Oh, wow.
And I always want to be like a scientist and do my PhD. So coming to an English-spoken country would be very ideal for me. Mm-hmm. So I came in 2009, and I was an exchange student at St. Mary's University, and I did the final year of my undergrad there and applied to grad school at Dow. Okay. And I was accepted into the program and started. So when I first came, it was interesting because I didn't know anyone in the city. And there was a huge change between Brazil and here. I was just 23 years old, right? So, and never left my house. I was very close to my family still. I'm very close to my family. So it was like a big step moving away from them and coming to a different country with a different language, different food, different weather.
Definitely different weather.
Yeah. But I was really happy to come to a city that was close to the ocean because I grew up by the ocean. And the same ocean as well, Atlantic Ocean. So when I first came, I met my roommate, and it was funny because she tells everyone that she met me on the streets. But it was pretty much like that because we rented a room when I first came, and then the house ended up being really bad for me to stay.
Okay.
So the first day I arrived, the house was empty. They were not prepared to receive us. And I was so scared, to be there by myself. And it was just 2 people in the house. And then the next day I went to, and tried to find someone that I could stay and that I felt more safe.
Okay.
So then I found my roommate, Sarah, and we are still best friends to this day. But it was funny because she has a lot of stories to tell about how I mess up my English so much when I first came. A lot of funny stories with soap and soup.
Oh.
I always mess it up, soap and soup.
It's close. I could see that. I could definitely see that.
Yeah. But then I started doing my PhD just after I arrived in 2010.
What did you do your PhD in?
I did my PhD in biochemistry at Dow. And I was studying breast cancer at the time. And my PhD supervisor was very supportive of engaging with community. So we gave a lot of talks to women that were going through breast cancer, survivors, and people also that lost someone. And want to hear about new research and what's the hope for the future, treatments and support. that the community could give to people that were going through the disease. So I was very like intimate with knowing people that were going through the disease, not just studying the disease. And then I became really interested in translational research, where I could use my research to help people in the community translate into something that could help and support people around me. And then just after I finished my PhD, I started becoming more and more trying to find a way to translate my research into society. And the last year of my PhD, I had my first child, and that taught me a lot about resilience and then stick with your goals and decided if I want to pursue my career or not and stay at home as well. So it was a moment that I had to decide, and it was a very challenging year because I had my daughter at the last year of my PhD. So I was writing my thesis at the time.
Okay.
And it was kind of a battle to take time off from the PhD to focus on my baby. So,
and how long had you been working on your PhD?
For 4 years, 4.5 years.
Yeah. So it's a lot of work and then get to the end. And like,
Yeah, exactly. So I said, well, I'm going to finish, but I need some time off, like to deal with like a little baby. And I want to breastfeed as well, her. And it was like something that I always want to do. So it was a struggle for me to breastfeed her in the beginning. So I said, well, if I go through this, I will breastfeed for 6 months exclusively. And then, but I had to go back to the university when she was 5 months old.
Oh, yeah.
And then now I had to bounce like both my jobs.
So did Dal or they gave you some time off to be able to leave, have baby, get yourself kind of back together after you have kids? I don't know if you're ever back together, but so they gave a little bit of flexibility to do that.
Yeah, so I had to kind of fight to be out of school for a little while because I had a scholarship, and the scholarship needed to finish at certain date. But because I had the baby, would have to go and extend the scholarship. So we had to kind of go around a little bit the system to allow me to take a couple months off.
Interesting.
But then I got a couple months off, and then when I returned to the university, I found someone that was close to the university to watch my daughter. And then I would go to the lab, I would write, and then go back to my friend's house, breastfeed, go back to the lab, and it would be like doing these things for like 3 months at least. Yeah.
Wow. That sounds hectic.
Yeah.
Lab baby. Yeah. And was your friend that was also, was there someone that was your other friend also working in a lab as well, or just?
No, she didn't have like a full-time job, so she was home, and then she could like help me with the baby. My husband also had like a full-time job, and we didn't have any family here, so we rely a lot on friends.
Right.
And then when we passed through that phase, I said, well, I bounce all these things right now. I can do everything. Like I can probably do my career. Like I survived to writing my thesis and breastfeeding a baby. I can focus on my career. I thought, well, that was like a good experience where I learned a lot how to do multiple things at the same time. And then my husband says I'm a professional multitasker because I can do so much at one time, right? So, and I think being a mother developed that side, I think, for me.
You kind of became like an octopus where you have like one hand is at the lab, one hand is with the baby, one hand is writing the thesis, studying, doing all of the things all of the time.
Yeah. And you kind of train your brain to be able like to multitask and do different things that are completely different from each other. Yeah.
So you had one kid, and you decided you finished your PhD, thank goodness, got that kind of out of the way. And then after you finished your PhD, did you continue down the research path? Did you stay with Dal and continue down kind of the research? And was that also with cancer research?
So I had the opportunity to leave Halifax to go to another university when I finished my PhD. But I had a small baby, and I didn't want to start over in another city. And I had a village of friends here that could help and support us. So I decided to stay, and I changed labs, and I also completely changed my research too.
Oh, interesting.
So I was studying breast cancer during my PhD, and I switched to muscle diseases for my postdoc fellowship. And right after my PhD, I started a postdoc fellowship.
Oh, wow. And what, maybe we talked about this before, what made you do this switch? Like, how did you decide to, I mean, obviously, you know, breast cancer research and working with the community is very engaging. And, you know, there's a lot of people who really need work done in that area. So it's a huge field.
Yeah.
What made you try to think about doing something a little different?
So first, I want to like change a little bit my main focus on the research. I want to like change the subject, change a little bit my subject to another field to learn more about other fields as well. But also in my personal life, being pregnant, I gained a lot of weight during my pregnancy. So I gained over 60 pounds in my pregnancy, and I became really aware of like fitness and wellness and eat better, healthy lifestyle. And then I became really interested into fitness and wellness, and then studying muscle kind of falls under that too. To have like a healthy body, you need like healthy muscles, right? And then I start the journey into studying muscle, and I went to a lab that was focused on mobility and then molecular science, and I had a lot of the molecular science, and then I started learning more about mobility and muscle system, neurosystem in this new lab. So when I started studying that, I didn't know how that could be commercialized at all, but I just like continued doing my research and think about next steps of my career. But just after I started my postdoc fellowship, I got pregnant and I had another baby.
Okay. Baby number 2.
The baby number 2 came along. And then at that time, I also gained more weight, and I became really interested in doing more things to be healthy, and also for the mental break as well. Like if you're more fit, if you do things to strengthen your muscle system as well, strengthens your mental health as well. And then I was able to run my first half marathon.
Oh, wow.
In that year.
Okay.
I had like
and this is after you had your
the second baby.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I ran the half marathon. I lost all the weight.
Okay.
And then again, went back to the lab to continue my research.
Okay.
And I was chaos because now I had 2 children, 2 children under 2.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, you definitely need to be in shape. And you need to be in shape and the octopus so that you can manage the kids' lab and all that kind of thing. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then we thought, well, I started looking more into muscle, and then became really interested into muscle. And we study a disease, muscle atrophy and also muscle dystrophy at the lab. And I was thinking in the back of my mind, how can I do something and translate this research into society? And then when I decided to now I'm going to pursue my career, I'm going to do this and focus on study and publishing papers and everything. Then I got pregnant again for the third time.
Wow. Okay. Okay. You're three times lucky.
Exactly.
3 times lucky. 3 times lucky.
Yeah. My husband was a little bit shocked.
Well, you know, it was pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
Pleasant surprise. And all this time when, you know, you're now getting to baby number 3, and you kind of changed directions with your professional career, going from cancer to muscle research, and you have the kids. What was your family in Brazil kind of aware of what was going on, or like how?
I always say like I was just able to do all this because my parents actually always flew from Brazil here to support me. So in each of the pregnancies, they came for at least 3 months, and they support me all through that. And they are like my biggest support team because they always say, well, whatever you need, we're going to support you in everything you decide. If you want to stay at home, we're going to support with that. If you want to have a career, we'll support as much as we can anything with the kids. And they have been doing that since the kids were born. They always here for the summer. When I need to do big trips, they come, they stay here, help with the children. I just recently went to San Diego for a conference. So they flew all the way here to stay with the kids for a week.
Wow.
So they are like my support team. And my mother is a huge example in my life too. So she raised me to have a career because she was very much into working, and she was a businesswoman too.
Okay.
Her father actually built a business from ground zero to something very successful.
Oh, wow. And this was in Brazil?
In Brazil, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And my mother continued that too. So she always support women in a sense they could have a career and
Right.
if they want to have a family as well. And she did both. She had just 2 children. So I had 3.
Yeah.
But she was said, if you want to continue your career, I will support you with the children and help
Yeah.
any way I can.
Well, it's interesting because I think a lot of progress has been made for women in research, in science, and becoming an entrepreneur, a business person. But it does take a village, a family, et cetera, to allow you to have some of that flexibility. Just even thinking about my own experience of just trying to go on a trip. When you have a small baby, there are many considerations that if you don't have a small baby that you don't have to think about, kind of all the logistics, and it can be very overwhelming. Just kind of while you're tired,
Yes.
your children don't let you sleep, and you have a big trip to San Francisco or some other places. And just trying to sort of organize that so that you can even show up. There's a lot of things happening kind of behind the scenes that a lot of people don't know or talk about.
Yeah. And the week after my trip to San Diego and San Francisco too, because I went to both, I went to Newfoundland for CDL, Creative Destruction Lab session was in Newfoundland. And it was the first time I flew out and had the children home with my husband, and I had like all this routine ready. I had clothes for the day 1, for day 2, for day 3. So he would know which clothes he would use for the children. And then I had what they're going to eat in each one of the days, and what's the activity he needs to take them to. Because that all fall into the mother, right? So I'm all the time driving the kids around for so many activities and things. So so it has to be really well planned. So everything in my life is really, really well planned. If not, I cannot roll. Right? So so I think like having a very good routine helps me a lot with having multiple jobs.
Yeah. And you said your mother was she a business person as well? She worked for your grandfather's company, and so she was kind of your role model of kind of how to do things, or that it was even possible, or
so my grandfather has a very interesting story because he came out of poverty and then started a business from ground zero, selling pots and pans from house to house. And then he would go to house and sell those pots and pans. And then he saved some money, went and bought more pots and pans, and then started slowly his business career, to the point that when he died, he had early stage Alzheimer's, and he died when he was 56, which is very young.
Yeah.
But when he died, he owned more than 10 stores, and he had like a furniture business that was very well known in the city. Everybody knew him as a very successful businessman. And he didn't have any education. He had no education at all, because he went to school just for a couple of years. He knew how to write his names and do some basic math, but that was it.
Interesting.
And he also thought that, like, the way he taught my mother was that if you work hard, you're going to accomplish things. And maybe like in the past, that was like the truth. You need to work really hard to accomplish things. And today, it changed a little bit. You also need to have an education. You need to have like a broad knowledge of different things. And that's important too. And my mother never had the opportunity to study. So she finished high school, but that was it. And he didn't influence her to continue into studying because he thought hard work was the most important thing.
Interesting.
So she started working with him when she was 13 years old.
Oh, wow.
And she was the one that he trusted the key for the stores, and she would open the stores really early in the morning. And she was like this business person. So growing up, we had people helping in the house too, so she would be able to work. And then she's a very successful businesswoman too, in a completely different business than mine.
Yeah. Well, that's actually really interesting. Thank you so much, first of all, for telling me this story about your grandfather and how he started a very small kind of business and grew it and grew. I mean, that sounds pretty amazing, actually, to end up with all of these stores and to have a business that is successful and can pass on to the next generation. Like, I think we know that like more than 50% of all small businesses just, end in
Disappear,
disaster within the first year or two. So that's quite an accomplishment. And, to have your mom come on and get some additional, basically on the job training to operate and manage as a woman all of these businesses is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But I would say what you're doing and kind of what your mother, your grandfather were doing is a little bit different. Do you guys ever talk about, you're kind of on I'd say the innovation based or the research based or translating research, super sciencey side of things compared to a brick and mortar kind of business. Do you guys ever talk about that, or does your family understand kind of what you're up to? Or they're just like, we love you, you're far away, we'll support you, you do whatever. We don't know what you're doing. My mother has no idea what I do, but sorry, Mom, but she doesn't know, but she's very supportive.
Yeah, so the business I had was a furniture store for many years. And now my mom switched to another business. But like when I started thinking about entrepreneurship, we always talk about how to build a business, how to have the support. And my business is completely different from hers, but I get a lot of advice on to how to manage people in the sales side as well, how to sell your idea, how to give value to what you're selling. So there is like a little connection between the two worlds.
I like it.
And then she also like support me a lot into education too, because she didn't have that in her life. So she just finished high school. So she always said, well, I want you to have an academic career too. So go through all the studies that you need to do. And then at that time, I wasn't thinking about entrepreneurship. And then when entrepreneurship clicked in my mind, I connected with everybody else that was like in my past, right? So how my grandfather did it. And I always think about him that had no or very little resources to start something out of nothing, right? Pretty much. And then with no money at all. And he built something that was massive for the size at the end of his life. So I always connect to him, and I always have that resilience as well built in me. And I think that some of the stories that I learned from him, like some of the other things that he had to go through, my mother had to go through too. And then I always connect to the experience that I heard from how they lived and how they built their own business. Yeah. Even though it's completely different from mine.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. In my family, we have this motto. It's just kind of like, it's not on a crest or anything, but it's like persevere and protect. So protect your family and just keep persevering. It's not quite the same as resilience, but it's just this like, just no matter what, just kind of keep going. And I imagine for your mother, your grandfather, or even for yourself, you have to have this thing in you that just says just keep going, even if it's tough.
Yeah, my mom always says, like, if you don't have the courage to try, you never will leave that stage where you are. So you have to have the courage to try. And if you fail, it's okay. At least you tried. And then you continue moving forward because you learn. But if you never have the courage to do something about it, you always will spend your life thinking, what if, right? So she always says that you have to try everything you can. And doors will open. And doors have been opening for me, like, since I started the business. Yeah. So it's been good.
That's great. Do you think, since our theme is around women and entrepreneurship and that sort of balancing act, do you think that it's been a difficult journey to become an entrepreneur? And I know we'll talk about that a little bit later, but do you feel like, have you had to make additional sacrifices to go down this path? I mean, it sounds like you have a lot of support, so that sounds great, but has it been a difficult journey?
Yes, for sure. Like when I start talking about translating my research into society, so the lab I was working on in my postdoc fellowship, they did basic science, but they really didn't have the drive to do commercialization or translational research. They just want to do basic science, which is fine. But I want to do something else. So when I start talking about like commercialization and moving away from academia and do translational research, I had a little bit of a resistance, like from the people that I was working with, because they didn't know how to do that. So it was like a different conversation completely away from basic research. And then I had to kind of learn my way through because I didn't have any business people around that could teach me entrepreneurship and biotech industry. So then it's when I started doing a lot of the programs at Dow to learn how to be an entrepreneur and how this idea would translate into something that would be commercializable, I guess. And I also had a little bit of resistance on the side that I was a mother, and a lot of people have that as positive, but also negative if you are a scientist, because a lot of there is things are changing right now, but there is also high expectation, and people usually think that if you have children, it's hard to meet those expectations. Right now, being a mother for 8 years almost, I think that the skills that I learned by being a mother actually helped me to have like a strong career path that I learned through the children and learned to communicate better. In my social skills, my soft skills are much improved because I am a mother. And I think the doors that opened, a lot of that opened because I'm a mother. So it's not that I'm a mother that I cannot do that. I think I can do that because I'm a mother. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I like that. I like that. A question we love to ask our on-site guests around entrepreneurship is kind of a special question, which is entrepreneurship, nurture or nature? What do you think?
I think he's both. For me, it's both.
Okay.
Because I think he's nature. I told you about my family story. So I think it was like deep in my heart that I needed to be an entrepreneur. And when I started the journey, I felt that click on me, like almost like this is my path through life, right? And then clicks on you right away. I didn't think that it was ever going to happen, but when it happened, I said, yeah, this is my path. So that was like inside of me. But I also think it's nurture as well. Like you need to be trained, you need to learn about what others did and then help you through the journey too. So I think it's a bit of both.
A bit of both.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I love it. Well, I just wonder if you have any advice. So if there are sciencey young women who are out there who are trying to decide kind of, I guess, like you were, can I do both? Can I have a family? Can I pursue research? Can I, what can I do? What do you have any thoughts or suggestions? Reflections.
So you always have to think where you want to go, right? Where do you want to go? How much do you want to risk or how much do you want to take on? You always have to think about that. Do you want to experience a new life? Do you want to be creative, innovative enough to accept all those changes and live with changes? Because entrepreneurship is changes, right? A lot of things change all the time. Are you a person that's work well with changes? And if you want to discover this new world of creation and innovate and sparkle your eyes just with an idea that it can change people's life, then I say take the shot, right? Try. Jump off the cliff. Right?
Don't stand on the sidelines. No. Just take a leap.
Jump.
Just take a leap. Take a leap. Well, I think that is perfect advice. I think that, it wasn't quite the same advice. My father would always say, if you don't ask, you don't get. So if you don't put yourself out there, then nothing will change, is kind of how I always sort of took that piece of advice. And I tried to, I wouldn't say 100% live by this, but I do think it's important to try to put yourself out there. But you're right. Know what it is that you want before you just don't willy-nilly just jump off the side of a cliff.
Yeah, exactly.
But make sure it's the right cliff.
Yeah, exactly. And then try different things too. I did try different things and then had good conversations with different people too, which helped to open my mind to what's the opportunity is like, right? I actually talked to so many people about my business before we incorporate the business. And that helped a lot to see the different revenues and different opportunities and values that we could achieve moving forward. And it's just about that. If you start talking, you'll be surprised of how many people you're going to find that just like you. And there is a very interesting conversation that we can have too about how my co-founder and I started a business too, because it was from...
Yeah. Well, we'll have to have our Onside podcast guests stay in touch with us to hear that next episode, because we are going to talk about the creation of your company, and that one will be in our next episode. But for this time going around, I want to thank you for joining us with the Onside podcast. If folks want to learn more about you and your company, and how can people find out more about you or get in touch with you? What's the best way to do that?
So LinkedIn, I'm always active on LinkedIn. The company also has a website. It's myomarmolecular.ca.
Hope everybody can spell that properly, but
yeah, Myomar with IYMYO Mar, molecular.ca.
Okay, well, that sounds great. We'll have everybody try to check that out. And I'd really like to thank Communities, Culture, and Heritage for your support. We're so grateful for your support in helping us make this podcast. For anyone who's interested in the Onside podcast, you can listen to us on all the usual stations, and you can check out our website, which is onsidenow.ca. Thanks, everybody.
This has been a Podstarter production.